Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a moving, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity, from innocence to awareness, from not knowing to understanding, from mistakes to learning, from trial to wisdom, from health to sickness, and back again we pray for strength. From joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion. Along the way, we learn that the true meaning of life is not about reaching a distant peak. It comes from walking the path and leaving footprints of love, care, and commitment for those around us. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, stage by stage, moving forward into life everlasting. We are here today to say goodbye to someone that achieved so many good and great things in his life, but for whom today we must say, Lech v'shalom, go in peace. We are here to honor Dick Turkel, a man of boundless energy and unwavering commitment, a mensch that will be remembered for his integrity, his generosity, his leadership, and above all, his love for family and community. To begin the ceremony, we will recite Tehillim, Psalms of David, in order to accompany the neshama, the soul of Rafael Moshe ben Ephraim Ve'eta on its new journey. We are going to start with Psalm number 121 that says, I lift my eyes up to the hills. From where does my help come? My help is from Hashem, the maker of the heavens and the earth. Your protector never slumbers. Hashem preserves you. By day, the sun will not afflict you, nor the moonlight by the night. God shall guard you from all evil, and will keep your life breath safe. God guard your going out and coming in from now to eternity. שיר למעלות, אשאינai אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם השם עושה שמים וארץ. אל יתן לעמוד רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, אדוני צילך על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה. אדוני ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. The second psalm that we are reciting today is a very well-known one, Psalm number 23, that says, God is my shepherd, I don't need anything else. He lays me down in green grass, he leads me by calm waters. He refreshes my soul. He leads me in the way of justice for the sake of his own name. Even if I walk in the valley in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because I know you are with me. Your rod, your staff, and your support comfort me. I hope that only goodness and kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in God's house forever. מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אכסר, מנודה שירביצני על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי אלך וגיא צל מוות לא אירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררי, דשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב החסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. This week's Torah portion Parshat Bo, brings us to a turning point in the story of our people. After years of oppression, God commands the Israelites to get ready, really ready for freedom. Freedom in the Torah is not just about escape. Freedom is about purpose, identity, and deciding what kind of future we are going to build. Our Torah portion reminds us that real meaning comes from what we make of our lives, the relationships we nurture, the values we pass on, and the futures we help build. That was Dick Turkel's way of living. So let's talk about him. Let's start saying that Dick liked to do things his way. When he believed in something, he was all in. If he saw value in an idea, a project, a hobby, or a person, he was 100% committed. Not halfway, not maybe, all in. He was analytical, calculated, thoughtful, and determined, and that mindset shaped his business, his friendships, and his family. He was a self-made man, and Dick was respected throughout Tampa for his success, integrity, and leadership. Dick's life was not just about business. There were many things he loved. Cooking was one of them. He served as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army, and there he ran the mess hall, feeding 3,000 hungry soldiers a day, which is basically a business degree in itself. Dick loved fried food, and he kept enjoying it all the way to 92. He may not have been a healthy eater, but he was a happy eater. When Dick was not cooking Spanish food or preparing breakfast, he spent time enjoying one of his other great loves, Broadway shows. Sound of Music, Cats, Carousel, and Chess were among his favorites. And twice a year, he made sure he was with Sandy in New York in the seats. Dick also helped reshape Tampa in meaningful ways. His passion for dogs and public spaces led to the creation of dog parks throughout the city. He loved his community, and the community loved him back. Dick was also extraordinarily proud of his Jewish identity. He took pride in being Jewish, in raising a strong Jewish family, and in passing that pride down. Strength, loyalty, and dignity were part of that Jewish pride. Dick cared deeply for this congregation, Rodef Sholom. He served on the board of directors, and he was active in our men's club, always showing up and always committed. Above everything else, what mattered most to Dick was his family. Family was central to who he was. Sunday nights were family nights, sacred time. He was devoted to his beloved wife, Sandy, and proud, very proud of his children and grandchildren. He loved traveling with them from Alaska to the Caribbean to Europe, sharing experiences and making memories. His life reminds us of the lesson in this week's Torah portion, Parshat Bo. Life is not just about where we come from, but about what we choose to build, the values we pass on, the people we care about, and the example we set. Let's honor Dick Turkel, Rafael Moshe Ben Ephraim Be'eta by living in the same way he did, fully, with care, and with love. May his memory be a blessing, and may his soul be bound up in the bond of life. I would like now to invite Robert to say some words.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Robert Turkel, for those who don't know me. Dick Turkel is my grandfather. I just got a couple things I want to come up here and say. I want to start with my dad and my Uncle Kenny, and also my Aunt Nancy. My grandfather raised two incredible sons and a daughter. My Uncle Kenny became an amazing lawyer, and my father Brian sells plastic all over the world. I know for certain that Grandpa is extremely proud of you guys. It's easy to see his humor wear off on Uncle Kenny and my father. There were times when I'd go to visit Grandpa, whether it was with my uncle or my dad, and most of the time, let's say it was just like some inappropriate jokes that always got us, and including Grandpa, he laughed really hard at them. Uncle Kenny, Dad, I know how much you guys love your father. Continue making him proud. And Aunt Nancy, Grandpa loved you a lot. Know that Grandpa is also very proud of you. I'd also like to mention that Grandpa, my grandpa, true OG Buccaneers fan. He bought season tickets back in 1972. I mean, the team didn't even play their first game until 1976. Uncle Kenny, my father and I and the usual crew have kept the tradition alive. And Grandpa, I want to thank you for starting a Buccaneer legacy. It has and always will be a big part of my life. Todd Bowles, on the other hand, though, I don't know, Grandpa, so I just had to squeeze that in there. And now I'm going to share a couple funny stories about my grandfather. The first story I'm going to talk about is this thing called the magic turtle. And Grandma, I'm sure you probably know where I'm going with this. When I was younger, every time we went over for a family gathering, my grandparents' old house in Davis Island, my sister Erin and I would get super excited about this small ceramic turtle that had like a little opening, like its shell opened up. It was on a small table close to the TV. Now, in this magic turtle, there'd always be candy, usually most of the time like small 100-gram bars or something like that. It took me a while to actually realize Grandma and Grandpa were simply just opening the magic turtle and putting the candy in there. For the longest time, I thought the turtle was actually magic. Of course, my grandparents knew that, yet they still did it every time. And when they probably still deny it to this day, ever putting candy in the magic turtle. I guess we'll call it that Turkel magic. Speaking of Turkel magic, it wasn't until early on in high school, excuse my language, but that I learned my grandfather was basically the shit in basketball at Jefferson High School. Before fully committing to playing football my whole life, I was very into basketball, and I thought I was going to be like top shot baller. Anyways, I was once my grandpa learned that about me, he started he was super excited, started putting up newspapers about, he was trying to find all these pictures he has, here, look at this, I made this 3-pointer, I had 30 points, or I did this, and he was super excited to show me, and I'll tell you, I for sure gained a lot of respect for him. He was a true baller back in the day. Another quick funny anecdote that I have was my grandfather's favorite line, one that he would always say to me. And it goes like this. I would go up to him when I saw him, and I would be like, "Hey, Grandpa, how are you?" And he'd be like, "I know you. Do you know my name?" I would say, "Yes, it's Grandpa, of course." And he'd always respond with the most emphatic, "That is correct." It was just something about tradition that he just said it every time, and it always made us chuckle just a little bit. A few last notes. I want to emphasize the importance of spending time with your loved ones. In the past 2 years, I went off to college, was abroad in Portugal, and I'm up in college in Boston. I've received phone calls for the passing of both my childhood dogs, a really good friend of mine, and now my grandfather. And as even as we've all gotten older, you may or may not have gotten busier and busier and busier, etc. So I'll leave you all with this. Always check in with your people. Make it a point to cherish the time with the people you love, because time is money, truly. And I can say I'm wealthy because of having someone like Grandpa in my life. Thank you, Grandpa, for always being so kind and caring, and I'm really going to miss you. Thank you.
Robert, you weren't supposed to cry. Thank you all for being here to support our family today. Before I begin, I want to share a special thanks. I don't know where they're at because I haven't really seen who's here. To V, Maria, Christina, and Jasmine for all their help and care over the past several years. Many, as you know, I'm the baby of the family. To say I was spoiled growing up might be a little understatement, but in my dad's eyes, I could truly do no wrong. Though I think my brother might have a different story about that and how that worked for him. Maybe he'll interject later, but while he may have been soft on me, he was firm about the foundations he wanted to have a student, team player, parent, and businessman. That started with sports. Dad pushed me to be a committed athlete. Because he knew no matter what you did, discipline is what turns talent into results. That grit eventually carried over into my education, though I have to admit that part took a little while. It was definitely a slow build as a business student, but my dad never lost patience with me. He just watched me find my stride, always believing I'd get exactly where I needed to go. Beyond work and school, Dad and I share two specific high-dollar habits: electronics and cars. I definitely inherited my love for high-quality gadgets and the finest engineered cars from him. I have such vivid memories of us going car shopping together. To most people, it's a chore, but for us, that's where the real business lessons happened. Watching him work a deal was like watching a master class. He taught me exactly how to be tough, negotiator, and how to never settle for less than what's fair. Those lessons at the car dealership, as well as the ones at the dinner table, eventually led me to be working right beside him at his company. Seeing his leadership in action was probably the best education I've ever received. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was giving me the tools confidence and to become a business owner. Once I had my own family, I realized those life lessons, failures and successes that I owe my dad for my life's foundation. I am the professional and the father I am today because I had one of the best mentors in the real world, my dad. Dad, my bank account might wish you had passed on that love for fast cars and new tech, but my heart is so grateful for everything else you gave me. Thank you for believing in me, for your patience, and for showing me the way. I love you.
It's the only way he could get me was to go full cry. What do I do now? First of all, I would love to be able to talk about my hobby for fast cars and tech, except there was no money left after he bought everything for Brian. I mean, that's like true. If anybody who grew up with us, unfortunately, I told Casper it was audience participation, right? Because he basically was a tenant in our house in those years. But if I wanted a Mongoose, I got like a used Mongoose BMX bike with like the basic spoked wheels it came with. Then I came home from like college and, you know, like, what was it? He had them up until he could drive. He'd have two blue alloy with the high alloy rims, and he'd have like two different shades of blue. And I'd be like, Dad, I think he got like $1,200 of tech in the back of his Nissan 200SX. My dad told me to put styrofoam behind the speakers and it would sound better. That's a true story, and I had to install it myself too, man, which is how it became so handy. Before I mean, it really was unfair. I mean, it's cool. I love you. He loves you. That's why he bought you everything. Boy, I told Brian when I saw his speech, he said it to me, I said, I could spend 30 minutes on that. I found myself a lot this week saying, what would Dad do? I am that guy who looked people in the eye when they lost a parent, and I said, oh, they were 88, they were 92, that's a full life. And they said, you'll never be prepared for this. And I am the guy now who's told 1 million people this week, you'll never be prepared for this. It's been a rough week, but the caregivers, Hanukkah, Christina, are you guys here? Where are y'all? Hey, thank y'all again. I call Veronica Hanukkah, and Christina, who I don't know if she's here, but I call her Christina. They put up with that for a long time. In addition to taking great care of Dad and being great friends to my father and comforting him, man, we rode this thing out through that storm, and I had to push Maria's car out of the poopy water. Poopy, out in Avila. How ironic was that? The streets of Avila filled with poop. But Dad loved y'all, and you were great, and thanks for putting up with us. Organic Turkel brother nonsense could get a little out of hand at times. Doug McFadden, I don't know if he's here, but my dad's doctor was just wonderful down the stretch. You know, Dad was in reasonably good shape. This wasn't, he had broken his hip, he was old. We were over there Sunday. He had a bad week last week, and Sunday he looked good. And Dr. McFadden said the same thing, he was eating, and his color was better. He had some pulmonary stuff going on. I walked out of Stuart Weissman's Shiva Monday night to text messages that he had not woken up. And I wasn't expecting it. But I think if you had told my dad at 70 years old that he could die at 92 in his sleep, he would have signed off on that. He would have cut that contract immediately. Thank everybody for coming. It would have made my dad happy to see y'all here. He loved people. He loved being liked. He really, when Robert was talking about the jokes, right? My dad would go tell jokes, lighthearted humor and all that, and my brother and I go absolutely batshit nuts over this. It was just so stupid. And then I have my kids routinely saying, you're making dad jokes like Grandpa now. And I've realized that, okay, maybe I should probably stop, say that he made bad jokes and say they were all hilarious. But he loved people. He loved to be liked. He really did. He would be very happy to see everybody here. And in 2016, my dad called me and asked me to do the speech when he got into the Jefferson High School Hall of Fame. He grew up in Riverside Heights. He grew up in the house on Braddock Street that the Antinoris lived in. I found out from my cousin Dory, I think, because my grandfather on that side, didn't make a ton of money. It was a really big house and big lot next door that he leased it while I think it was Iggy Antinori was in prison. Isn't that a comforting thought that my dad lived in a mafia house while the guy was in prison? That's not a leash you want to overstay, I guess, but I went to do the speech, and so I had the speech ready as much as I'll ever get ready to give a speech, because I never write these things out because it's what I do for a living, and I usually suck at these kinds of speeches. And I feel real good about it. I talk about his high school scrapbook, and I'm feeling like, yes. And Lou Preda Sr. had gotten in the Preda family. My grandfather had hired Lou Sr. as his apprentice accountant. My mom's dad, Dave Schwartz. And there was a sense of chemistry there. The Preda families were there, and I give this great speech. My dad gets up and immediately says, that's what you get when you ask a lawyer to give a speech at your thing. That was way too long. And I'm like, geez, man, that's just so unfair. So I said, I'm going to write it down this time, and I'm going to be timed and all this stuff. And I told Rabbi that, and I said all the right things. And I tried to write a speech, and I looked at the speech. I just played that Godfather music because that was a little too weird based on what I'm about to say. Because I looked at the speech and I saw lines like Dick Turkel was a man of guts and vision, and I learned many things from him in his study, and then I realized I was just quoting The Godfather. So I went back to Lawyer World just to kind of talk about my dad. I'm not going to talk about what my dad did. He did too many things for me to talk about. I would be here forever. He had accomplishments, awards. It'll be in the obit. If you get a chance, this book has all his high school memories and pictures in it. And, he always made me, when we were kids, he would show us this, and things like telegrams when he was in the state tournament and things like that, pictures of him at Plymouth Park. And y'all have it at Shiva if y'all want to look at it. But, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, who he was than what he did. And if it goes too long, Dad, I'm sorry. You gave us a lot to talk about. It's amazing to me, Robbie identified some of these things. My dad had a relentless commitment to excellence in everything he did. His standard in anything he did was just high. It was all in. It was nothing. He never did anything half-baked. If he saw value in doing something, he obsessed over it. It was a character trait he shared with my Uncle Bobby. My Uncle Bobby was his best friend, and his death was probably one of 2 times in my dad's life I saw him cry. If you had met them both organically, you would never thought they'd be friends because they were the most opposite personalities you could possibly imagine. But they both obsessed over things they did. If Uncle Bobby was on ham radio, the next thing you know, he had an entire wing of the house with an antenna. And that was Dad. Everything he did, in high school, it was as simple as him deciding, basketball was his thing. You could not drive north of Kennedy up to the north part of the city without him making you drive down Braddock Street and then the exact path he walked to Plymouth Park where he played basketball every day. I really got sick of doing that. Really sick of doing it. But you're like, oh, Dad, here we go again. Okay, you walk down this street, walk there, there's Ola, here's the basketball court. It looks the same. I go, that's right. But that was where he spent his youth, and he played basketball. He was quick. And he could jump, and just like Brian and I, quick jumpers. He was shooting accuracy was really a thing, and because he practiced relentlessly. He could control that, right? Muscle memory, you could just sit there, and that's what he did. And if he could control something like that, he would practice and do it until he was the best. He went to Florida to play basketball, something I didn't really know. He quit because there was a guy ahead of him from Jacksonville, and he said, Kenny, I'd never beat him out. We were the same class, same age, no chance. So I went, and he ran intramurals. The whole school's intramurals, that's how he paid for college. And when he was in the Army, he ran a mess hall. If you were to ask my dad the most fun he had in a job in his life, he would tell you running a mess hall in the Army. He loved it. He loved this idea that he could take care of, of all these people, and they won awards and all this stuff. And this resonated through everything. He took up racquetball, and they dragged me and Brian down on Saturdays at Kangaroo Courts or the Tower Club, make us sit in a locker room with a bunch of naked old men walking around. Poor Brian would wake up in night sweats, and we didn't do anything. We'd watch Uncle Bobby and Dad play racquetball and yell at each other. But when he did racquetball, he was, next thing you know, he's on the ladder, and he's trying to win the ladder tournaments. He's got all the new gear. CBs. We couldn't just have a CB. We had to have a CB in every car, and then we had to have a base station and a card with all these weird nicknames. And then we'd sit in the freaking rumpus room and get on a CB. And we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know CB talk. We weren't truckers. We were trucker-like. But, that was just what he did. If he saw value, he went in, and he went all in. If you came to my house during some of the Broadway years, I think that he had Donny Osmond and Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat on an endless loop on a DVD for like 3 years. Don't get me wrong, I like Donny Osmond. I like the show, but it was a little much. And then he'd pivot, oh, you want something else? Then you get Chess or Les Mis or Carousel. He would obsess over those shows. It wasn't from a place, he was just trying to get you to like things he liked because he thought they were so great, and that was really a defining aspect of his character. When he got into the electronics business, that was not a big money-making thing for him. I don't think he necessarily lost money in it. It was just a new thing, and he thought it was fun. We thought it was fun, too. It was cool. We had everything, like every big screen, video games. He couldn't just go there and sell TVs and stuff. He had to go there and sell Atari computers, Hillsborough County. He just saw an angle there. Atari had a home PC at the time that was the standard. So we ended up with a commercial grade satellite dish in our backyard. Like big, like they put on top of news stations, which was awesome because we had everything 24/7, all sorts of cool sports shows and other shows. Other shows. We were a popular house in the mid-'80s, okay? I'm not so sure Mom liked fielding those phone calls. What the hell did my kid watch at your house today? These were, I'm talking about obscure sports like rugby and things like that. No. You did, I know you got someone right down Martinique. I remember one particularly. I blamed it on Brian. When he bought a video camera and stood on the top of the press box at Corral Stadium, first for me, then for Brian. He took video of all of our football games. And then on Saturdays, the OGs, my ride or die guys, you know, Mike, Steve, Andrew, Al, whoever would come over and we'd watch films, so I knew Coach was going to blow me up a day beforehand. But my dad had taped all these games. He would even, you know, make Italian sausage for everybody. He liked our friends. I think he did. I think he liked all of our friends more than he liked any of us, you know. He loved it when our friends were at the house, you know, and loved entertaining them. But, you know, he had this saying that he used to say, you know, he would say, you know, that guy's a doer, you're a doer, you know, you do things. And that's how he looked at these things. He didn't like, you know, pick a book and then study something and not do it. He would, if he saw value in it, he did it, and he did it all in. I think that my dad had strong opinions about things. Boy, there's one for the eulogy understatement catalog. He had strong opinions, and he could be polarizing at times. Thank God he didn't pass that down to me. Thank God I avoided that. Brian, thank God your temper didn't turn out that way, you know. Nancy, you may have won the genetics on that one, because let me tell you something, that is definitely flowing. But he also, you know, wasn't a nasty person when he argued things or whatever. You know, he was always civil in that, and he loved his friends. And sometimes I would challenge his friends. I see Uncle Merrill there. I saw him when I walked in, and Uncle Merrill, if you said that didn't challenge you ever, then I'm calling you out right now, because it challenged all of us. And, you know, but he'd been your friend. I went to my first Gator game with him and you and Kenny when I think I was 7 or 8 years old. And my dad was committedly loyal as a friend to the people that were in his life. And as time went on, a lot of those people passed away. And I know he would be happy Merrill was here. And I know, Joanne, you're here, and I'm sure he would be happy about that, and he would be more happy if Bob was here too. But if you understood my dad, he valued your friendship and would not, there wouldn't be a thing he wouldn't do for you. And I think that's something that was passed on to all of us. He loved his siblings. You know, I've talked about my Uncle Bobby. That was his best friend. I don't think my dad ever really understood the idea that he could actually die one day until Uncle Bobby passed away 4.5 years ago-ish. He always says one of the last times I talked to Bobby, he said, Dickie, can you believe we're 87 years old? Such a complex but simple relationship, and he was never the same after my Uncle Bobby died. He was equally impacted when my mom's brother died in a plane crash in '87. The 2 times I've seen my dad cry were when Uncle Danny died and when Uncle Bobby died. You know, Sue is a sister who I think to him was always his big sister, as well as a culinary genius. You know, he felt that she died with a sense of grace and integrity, that she lived and on her own terms. And he loved her so much, he always just worked hard to keep people together. And that was, he preached family. We didn't have much family. We're a small family, you know. And we weren't pre-1900, but we were when we got to this country. And, you know, he was always very big on it. And whether he lived it or whether he preached it, it was important to him in every aspect, okay? And whether that meant the immediate family, whether that meant Aunt Susie, whether it meant Uncle Bobby, going on these godforsaken vacations where I routinely got hit by him for stomping my feet, or Brian throwing a boulder into a pool, then blaming me. You know, that was who my father really was. And, you know, to Robbie's point, I'm amazed he picked up on this. My dad was as much about this city as you could be. He would ask questions like, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to live in Tampa, Florida. Why wouldn't you want to live here? It's a great city. You can get anywhere you want. He was a UT fan, which led to him buying Bucks tickets in '72. He used to drag us all to UT games on Saturdays, and we go to Vesuvio's. And I know we did that as a bigger family in El, because I remember everybody being there, and it was never pizza this city as good as Vesuvio's. And he loved the Bucks. When they got to the playoffs the first time, he rented a Winnebago, and we slept at the parking lot and wrote signs, you know, go Bucks, throw those stinky Rams in the bay, all sorts of crazy stuff like that. He would have kept going. I think his health, you know, made it very hard for him to do that. I will tell you, my dad saw himself as a protector of this family in ways that I don't think he would have discussed a lot. You know, he went to bed with stress at nights. He went to bed, we gave him things to worry about, and you know, certainly he had all the normal worries. But in his own quiet way, because he wasn't the most expressive human being on the planet, that was where he saw his role. And he took it on through good and bad, right and wrong, you know, and fought and protected. And trust me, I know I gave him plenty to deal with in that respect. Brian, you almost set the house on fire and got caught speeding. 95 on Boy Scout, I'll never get that one, but fast cars, high tech, all that crap. But at the end of the day, my father had a very strong old school morality to him, a very strong moral compass, and he shared that with my uncle also. My dad knew right and wrong. He knew it with a real sense of clarity, and if there was one thing I learned growing up in his house, it was that he had a profound sense of right and wrong. And if my dad did something that was wrong, he didn't do it because he wanted to do something that was wrong. He did it with the greatest of intentions. So that, you know, old school morality is certainly something that he passed down. He was also a big Florida Gator fan. If he knew Coach Todd Golden called me this morning to express his condolences, he'd be like jumping up and down, man. Then he would ask me 20 minutes later, who's Coach Todd Golden? But I would understand that because he's 92. At the end of the day, this has been a rough week. I've tried to get past the grief in enough of a way to think about things he would have done or wanted said. And I think I'm good on that. It wasn't always easy to be his son. That standard of excellence was expected all the time. And I don't mean in some weird Stephen King son shows up with a butcher's knife in the middle of the night. At least it's to me. Brian, maybe you did that. But when he used a butcher's knife, he would have bought you like a high-tech gun or something. But you know, there wasn't a day, and I said this in my post, you know, there wasn't a day, and I mean this, that I wasn't proud to carry his name. That's what you're left with. And, I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him. That's it. I'm done. Don't wait for more. I do stop at some point.
I'm Nancy. I think most of you know me, but if you don't, I'm Nancy, and I'm the oldest. I don't usually mind public speaking, but this one they had to talk me into, so bear with me. And here I am. 1 second. Where do I put this? My dad was larger than life in some of the simplest, most generous ways. He showed love through experience, through food, which I heard everybody laughing, especially the fried food and the Spanish food, through being present, through making ordinary moments feel special. Some of my favorite memories are of his cooking. I know a lot of our friends are going to agree with this. He didn't just make meals, he created moments, and he cooked for friends, for family, for anyone lucky enough to be at our table that day. Food was how he gathered people and how he cared. One of the greatest gifts my dad ever gave me was a day in New York City. This came as a shock to my mom, and the boys may be surprised as well. We were on a family vacation, but he stole me away for about an hour, and he took me by the hand, I was like in my teens, and walked me through that city, just the two of us, hand in hand, and he took me to Fortune Off Jewelry, and he wanted to be the one who bought me my very first important piece of jewelry. It's a tiny emerald ring, and Danielle's wearing it for me today because I had some surgery. He wanted me to feel special, to be chosen, to be seen. He once promised me he would be that first man to ever take me to Vegas. But life had other plans, things got in the way. That trip didn't really happen when we thought it would. But years later, when I was checking in at Caesar's Palace, the receptionist handed me a Hallmark card. And this Hallmark card told me to turn around and look at the elevator. And there was my dad standing there, as we had always planned. My dad had flown in, so he could keep that promise he made to me to make sure he was there no matter what. That was who he was. There's a song from Carousel, and you've heard us mention, he really instilled this love of Broadway in all of us. It just goes on forever. There's a song from Carousel that my dad loved. It's called You'll Never Walk Alone. It was one of his favorite musicals, one he shared with me, and that song always felt like his promise. It says, when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. And what I always heard in this was, whatever comes, I am here, I am with you. You are never by yourself, I am here. And that is how he loved me, with presence, with constancy, with the kind of loyalty that made you feel protected simply by being his. And later, that same love became what he gave my girls, my two daughters. My children contributed some of this here. To my daughters, Danielle and Jillian, and I want to say hi to Jillian, she's watching us from New York, their grandpa was a doorway into a bigger, more joyful world. He taught them a love for dogs, for travel, for adventure, and for culture. He took them on endless trips to Disney World, Universal, to New York, on their first journeys to Europe and to Broadway, shows that made life for them feel magical. And in between those big moments, he gave them the small ones, countless sleepovers with waffles and specialty syrups, jumping on the bed, which my mom really didn't like. Being with Grandpa meant being part of something fun and special. Beyond the joy and magic he brought into their lives, he also led by example what hard work and integrity and success looked like. Through his business and through his daily life, my dad showed his grandchildren what it looks like to commit to something, to build, to persevere, and to take pride in doing things well. He didn't lecture, he modeled. That example quietly modeled who they became. That example shaped who they became. Danielle, who is here today, followed a path of service and excellence, becoming a physician assistant in gastrointestinology oncology at Moffitt. She helps to save lives. I've lost my place. Almost there. Jillian cannot travel to be here today. She is 36 weeks pregnant with the second Turkel great-granddaughter, and she is live with us via stream. She's represented, though, by Matan Cohen, her husband, who thought it very important to fly in today. Jillian found her way into work rooted in responsibility and conviction, serving in roles that would reflect her deep sense of purpose and commitment to the world around her, to the American Jewish Committee, and Palantir Technologies. Their paths, my children, are different, but the foundation is the same. The values that my dad lived, the standards he set, the belief he had in them long before they fully believed in themselves. My dad and my mom had a special ritual with the girls when they were tiny kids. In the evenings, they would take them outside and they would look up to the moon, and they had this little ritual, and it would be like, the moon. And it became a thing for them, a quiet moment, a little magic that even lasted into adulthood. So now when you look up and see the moon, think of my dad, okay? Think of your own loved ones who have passed, giving you a smile from up there, a little hello, a reminder that love like this doesn't disappear. It stays with us. It guides us. It lights the way. In Judaism, we say, may his memory be a blessing. We are saying something very specific. We believe that memory is not passive. The way we carry someone forward through our actions, our values, and the lives we live is how they continue to exist in the world. A blessing is something that multiplies. It moves, it endures. To say, may his memory be a blessing, is to commit to letting what he gave us ripple outward. We also say, Baruch Dayan Hamet, blessed is the true judge. It is one of the oldest Jewish responses to loss. It acknowledges that even in heartbreak, even in confusion, even when the world feels unjust and we stand in humility before the truth, we do not pretend to understand. We simply affirm that life is sacred, that loss is real, and that love is eternal. These words hold both grief and faith in the same breath. They remind us that mourning is holy, that memory is powerful, and that a life like my daddy's does not end. It becomes woven into who we are through knowing him. May his memory be a blessing. Baruch Dayan Hamet. Daddy, I love you and adore you always and forever.
Thank you all. El Maleh Rachamim is a prayer in which we ask God that the soul of our loved one find perfect peace in Gan Eden, in paradise, in heaven. This is the prayer that we are going to recite right now. So I'm going to ask you please to rise. El Maleh Rachamim Shochen Vambromim Hamtze Menucha Nechona Al Kanefei Ashchina V'mahalot Kedoshim utehorim, kezohar arakia mazirim, et nishmat, et nishmat. Rafael Moshe בן אפרים ואתה שהלך לעולמו ברור שכל הנספים כאן מתפללים לעילוי נשמתו בגן עדן וגן עדן תמנוחתו לכן בעל הרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, וצרור ויצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח ושלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. God grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Dick Turkel, Rafael Moshe Ben Ephraim Veeta, who has gone to his eternal home. His wife Sandy, his daughter Nancy and her husband Jack, his sons Kenneth and Brian, and their wives Jennifer and Allison, his grandchildren Daniel, Gillian and Matan, David, Rebecca and Carson, Jonathan, Robert and Erin, and his great-granddaughter Annie, along with all his family, friends, and all of us gathered here today. We all ask you, God, that Dick find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And we say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Cornmore. So, on behalf of the family, I want to thank everybody who came into such an opportunity to remember Dick. Thank you so much for your presence. This concludes the services at Road of Shalom. Interment will take place at Woodlawn Cemetery, actually the Sherry Zettings section of the Road of Shalom Cemetery. For those who will be riding in procession with us, I just want to remind you to put on your headlights to identify your cars as part of the procession. Feel free to take your head coverage with you. And also, I want to ask you, everybody, to please, especially those going to the cemetery, promptly return to your cars because we do have police escorts waiting, and they're going to want to exit the parking lot as soon as possible. Also, please allow the family to get to their car. You'll have an opportunity to visit with them and speak with them immediately following the cemetery service. They'll be coming back here to the synagogue for the meal of consolation and Shiva. And